Top 10 Creepypastas that are based on true stories. 10. Annabelle. Annabelle is an allegedly haunted Raggedy Ann doll that is housed in the Occult Museum of the paranormal investigators Ed and Lorraine Warren. Annabelle was moved there after supposed hauntings in 1970. A character based on the doll is one of the antagonists that appears in the Conjuring universe. According to the Warrens, a student nurse was given the doll in 1970. They said that the doll behaved strangely, and that a psychic medium told the student that the doll was inhabited by the spirit of a deceased girl named Annabelle. The student and her roommate tried to accept and nurture the spirit-possessed doll, but the doll reportedly exhibited malicious and frightening behavior. It was at this point that the Warrens say they were first contacted, moving the doll to their museum after pronouncing it demonically possessed. The doll remained in a glass box at the Warrens Occult Museum in Monroe, Connecticut until the museum's closing. Texas State University Assistant Professor of Religious Studies Joseph Laycock says most skeptics have dismissed the Warrens Museum as full of off-the-shelf Halloween junk, dolls, and toys, books you could buy at any bookstore. Laycock calls the Annabelle legend an interesting case study in the relationship between pop culture and paranormal folklore and speculates that the demonic doll trope popularized by films such as Child's Play, Dolly Dearest, and The Conjuring likely emerged from early legends surrounding Robert the Doll, as well as from a Twilight Zone episode released 5 years prior to the Warrens' story, entitled Living Doll, in which the character of the mother is named Annabelle. Laycock suggests that the idea of demonically possessed dolls allows modern demonologists to find supernatural evil in the most banal and domestic of places. Commenting on publicity for the Warrens Occult Museum coinciding with the film release of The Conjuring, science writer Sharon A. Hill said that many of the myths and legends surrounding the Warrens have seemingly been of their own doing and that many people may have difficulty separating the Warrens from their Hollywood portrayal. Hill criticized sensational press coverage of the Warrens Occult Museum and its Annabelle doll. She said, like real-life Ed Warren, real-life Annabelle is actually far less impressive. Of the supernatural claims made about Annabelle by Ed Warren, Hill said, "We have nothing but Ed's word for this, and also for the history and origins of the objects in the museum." The doll was also described in Gerald Brittle's 1980 biography of the Warrens, The Demonologist. 9. Ghost Ambulance of Monterrey, Mexico. This next creepypasta story is a series of real-life videos that come from Monterrey, Mexico. According to the story, a man was murdered on the street of Ave del Paraíso, San Nicolas de los Garza, Nuevo León. He was taken to the scene aboard a car, and his perpetrators shot him at point-blank range. He passed away just as the ambulance arrived to pick him up. The roadside cross now marks the site of the tragic event. But here's where things get strange. Drivers began to realize that every time they drive by this roadside cross while listening to radio station 690 AM, their car stereo reception was interrupted by the unexplainable sound of an ambulance siren.
Ya vemos la cruz ahí. No mames, güey. No mames, güey.
Ahí está la cruz.
No mames, güey, no mames.
Ahí se ve la cruz en la orilla, que es
No mames, güey, se siente bien ojete, güey.
no te pases. Se bien pesado.
Ahí está. No mames, güey. Güey, mírame. Güey. No mames, güey.
Ahí vamos. Por allá está la cruz. Dale lento, más lento. ¡A la madre! ¿Dónde está la cruz? Dale.
Ferrota.
Es para que no le tengas miedo ni tantito a la altura, ¿eh?
No, nos da vértigo, pero...
¡Sí es cierto! ¡Grábalos! ¡Sí es cierto! ¿Qué pedo, güey? ¿Qué pete, mamá? A ver, la señal del celular está bien.
Las montañas, pues, fueron de las elegidas, sobre todo el día de hoy.
Sí, la verdad, mucha gente yendo a las montañas, incluso...
Tantas evidencias no pueden ocultarse. Esto es una realidad absoluta. El mundo ahora está con dimensión de un enfoque diferente del deporte. Con Roberto Hernández Contreras, Víctor Manuel Hernández y Roberto Hernández Barocio.
¿Qué dice? Ay, que guarda el respeto.
8. The Slit-Mouthed Woman. Kuchisaki Anna had hoped to keep the affair a secret from her noble samurai husband, but once the discovery was made, the warrior burst into a rage. Knowing of her incredible betrayal, he sliced a permanent grin into her face and shouted, "Who will think you're beautiful now?" As she died from the blood loss. The first reported sightings of this scenario, a damned spirit, able to walk amongst and harm those of us in the mortal world, began in 1979. The public became fearful of a so-called monster woman, who stalked the Nagasaki prefecture in areas close to where children would congregate. Accounts from survivors have witnessed state that the unusual person would approach her victim, and ask them a simple question, "Watashi karete? Am I beautiful?" Those who answered no were slaughtered on the spot, cut in half immediately by a pair of large scissors. However, as many children did reply yes, she would reveal her scarred face at them before asking, even like this. Answering no results in death, and the deceased often found with a Glasgow smile carved into their own faces. Answering yes means you will be left alone, until you return home, that is, where she will inevitably finish the job she started. Attempting to flee will result in failure, as the slit-mouthed woman can appear from anywhere and confront you again, intent on bringing about your death. The only known method of properly countering her focus is to either answer her question of if she looks pretty even like this with so, which will confuse her long enough to return to safety. If you have lollies or sweets on you, scattering them around her will also buy you that time, as she is distracted by grabbing the candy. Sightings of her continued into the early 2000s, with adopting a surgical face mask to hide the cuts, but has since dialed down significantly. Perhaps her jealousy and angry spirit has finally left us, or with how protective society is of its children in nowadays. Seeing the slit-mouthed woman becomes harder by the second, unable to draw her out. Chances are, however, that she is simply in wait for the next one to come along. 7. The Midnight Game. The midnight game is an old pagan ritual, used mainly as punishment for those who have broken the laws of the pagan religion in question. While it was mainly used as a scare tactic to not disobey the gods, there is still a very existent chance of death to those who play the midnight game. There is an even higher chance of permanent mental scarring. It is highly recommended that you do not play the midnight game. However, for those few thrill seekers searching for a rush, or for those delving into obscure occult rituals, these are simple instructions on how to play. Do so at your own risk. It must be exactly 12 a.m. when you begin performing the ritual. Otherwise, it will not work. You will need a candle, a piece of paper, a writing implement, matches or a lighter, salt, a wooden door, and at least one drop of your own blood. If you are playing with multiple people, they will need their own of the aforementioned materials and they will have to perform the steps below accordingly. Step 1. Write your full name, first, middle, and last, on the piece of paper. Put at least one drop of blood on the paper. Allow it to soak into the paper. Step 2. Turn off all of the lights in the place you are doing this. Go to your wooden door, and place the paper with your name on it in front of the door. Now, take out the candle and light it. Place it on top of the paper. Step 3. Knock on the door 22 times. The hour must be 12 a.m. upon the final knock. Then, open the door, blow out the candle, and close the door. You have just allowed the midnight man to enter your house. Step 4. Immediately relight your candle. This is where the game begins. You must now lurk around your now completely dark house, with the lit candle in your hand. Your goal is to avoid the midnight man at all costs, until 3:33 a.m. Should your candle ever go out, that means the midnight man is near you. You must relight your candle in the next 10 seconds. If you are not successful in doing this, you must then immediately surround yourself with a circle of salt. If you are unsuccessful in both of your actions, the midnight man will create a hallucination of your greatest fear, and rip out your organs one by one. You will feel it, but you will be unable to react. If you are successful in creating the circle of salt, you must remain in there until 3:33 a.m. 6. Abandoned by Disney. Abandoned by Disney is a creepypasta about a man exploring an abandoned Disney resort, named Mowgli's Palace. The story's climax comes when the man finds a room marked Character Prep 1 which is inhabited by photo-negative mascots that seem to be alive, and flees when he witnesses one rip off its own head. Luckily, the story is fake, but there was once an actual Disney theme park in the Bahamas named Mowgli's Palace, which opened in the late 1990s, but sadly closed down shortly after. Nowadays, the site has been demolished, and houses were built on the property. 5. Aguirre Hospital. A man is happy to go on a winter break. While doing so, he decided to go and explore an abandoned hospital. While exploring, he hears a lot of strange sounds in the building. After hearing a shuffle noise coming from his right, he saw a shadow figure run down the hallway. He ran after it. The hallway had a left turn at the end, and then a right, leading into a bigger hallway with more doors. Nothing was found in the hallway. He began to hear voices within the hospital. After encountering the ghosts of the dead babies covered in blood, he ran out of the hospital. 4. The Island of the Dolls, originally owned by Don Julian Santana Barrera, is full of dolls hanging from trees and buildings covered with cobwebs and insects. The place was named in the 1950s when the dolls started randomly appearing on the island. Santana was a neighbor of the Barrio de la Asunción, where he used to go to drink pulque after selling his vegetables, until he began preaching the Bible due to superstitions which led to him being expelled from the sector. According to a legend, a young girl drowned entangled among the lilies of the canal and her body was found on the banks of the Santampa Chinampas. Santana claimed to have heard the girl crying out, "I want my doll," and terrified, hung up the doll he found near the girl's body. After that, every time he went outside he found a new doll hanging from one of the trees. He later died in the exact same spot as the drowned girl, and many believe that his death was caused by the girl's spirit, which still haunts the island. In 1987, an eco-tourist rescue was made and the island was found covered with water lily. After the death of Santana, the Chinampa became a tourist attraction. The place began gaining fame in 1943, when Mexican filmmaker Emilio Fernandez filmed Maria Candelaria there. With a significant number of international and local channels have featured articles on the island, including the Huffington Post, Travel Channel, and ABC News. The dolls are still on the island, which is accessible by boat. The island was featured on the Travel Channel show Ghost Adventures and the Amazon Prime show Lore. It was also featured in BuzzFeed Unsolved. Shane Maidage, a firm skeptic of the paranormal, has asserted that he believes in the legends about the island. The island was also used for the episode Estas son las Mananitas, Season 1 Episode 10, of the Spanish TV comedy Nosotros los Guapos for Televisa, where the main characters Vitor and Albertino are left behind on the island by a irritated Dona Cuca, and as night falls they are rescued by the local emergency crews and end up on the news. 3. The Elevator Game. This was a simple game that thrill-seeking people played, until its popularity and sinister aura boosted due to the death of Elisa Lam. She was found dead in a water tank of Cecil Hotel in downtown LA, after being reported missing for a month. Later on, video footage went viral of her displaying strange behaviors on an elevator, hiding in the elevator, talking, and walking in and out of the elevator. People began to make theories of her death, which included the elevator game. 2. La Llorona. A beautiful woman named Maria marries a rich ranchero, farmer, and soon bears 2 children. However, she soon saw her husband with another woman. Enraged, she drowns her 2 kids. When she came back to her senses, she realized she murdered her children, and ended up drowning herself as well. Sadly, she was unable to join the afterlife with her children, therefore she roams around the earth looking for her children. 1. Robert the Doll. Not for the faint of heart, Robert the Doll really exists. The myths surrounding him vary, especially since he became so popular on the internet. The doll was given to artist Robert Eugene Otto in the late 1800s or early 1900s by his grandfather while he was on a trip to Germany. The doll, which he named after himself, then took on a life of its own and began to scare the family. Otto is said to have kept his doll into adulthood, and it subsequently led his late wife to insanity. The doll is currently residing in the Fort East Martello Museum in Key West, Florida. Visitors must ask Robert politely if they want to take his photo. If they mock him or take his photo without permission, Robert is said to lay a curse on them.